Good morning. Saturday, September 12th, 2020. This is Spade of Spades podcast. This is Vic. Zamor. And in studio, we got my good brother, Christopher Stevenson, here with us today.
What's up?
So, briefly, before we were in studio, last go around, we didn't really get to talk about the Jacob Blake situation up in Wisconsin. For me, it's kind of it's obviously I'm on both sides of it. Me being a black man in this country, and then also I'm also trained to be a law enforcement officer. So, I'm kind of in between both sides of it right now. But one thing that I do want to tell people, being as though I'm going through this training process, is the fact that don't try to make this a race war. I know there are a lot of bad situations where white police officers do target us on purpose just to get a quota or just because they have that hate in their heart. But at the same time, people on the outside looking in have to understand that certain situations these officers are put in are very, very dangerous. So in a situation where, in Jacob Blake's case, he walked around his car, went in his car, went to go grab for something, whether he had the knife on him in his possession or not, is besides the fact. But when you put yourself in a position where you have to force an officer to make a split-second decision, whether it's right or wrong, you kind of have to just take a step back and just realize, okay, it's not all about, it being a black versus white kind of thing. It's, because in my training so far, they've put us in those situations where we have to decide whether we're going to shoot someone or not going to shoot someone. Mm-hmm. And if you're right, okay, you're praised for it. But if you're wrong, you go to jail for, maybe the rest of your life, and you lose your livelihood, you lose your family, you lose your career.
But you should never lose your life.
Well, you should never lose your life, but at the same time, for those officers, you got to think in those moments where they have to decide whether they want to act, it's less than a second.
Mm-hmm. I hear you, Vic, but on my end personally, if it was a white guy walking to that car, walking away from that fight, they wouldn't even thought that he had any fucking thing to do with it. Mm-hmm. Let's be real. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't have thought he had shit to do with shit. They would have looked at him as a white guy going to his vehicle. Right. But because they see a black man walking away from a situation, and it turns out all he's trying to do is break it up. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And he's shot 7 times for trying to de-escalate a situation.
Well, so the whole shot 7 times thing, so I'm gonna speak on that briefly as well, because and also there's a lot of instances where white police officers kill white people, but it's never put on camera. Mm-hmm. And
there are many instances.
Yeah, and that's because and the
problem altogether.
And the media,
it's a black people problem. Yeah. When we say police brutality, when we say people are dying in the streets for no reason, it's a bigger issue for African American because we only make up 13% of the population. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Our number should not be higher. Our murder number should not be higher than the population number. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially by the people that are sworn to protect us.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. I mean, a lot of people that are, pro-cop, and I'll just use that term in this instance, say, well, what about black-on-black crime, right? And for me, when they say that, it's like, you have to understand that, yes, black people are going to kill other black people, white people are going to kill other white people, but the difference is, an officer, this is your job, right? Yep. This is your sworn duty to protect the people.
Yep.
So you have to take it in a different capacity, on a different level when you go outside every day. You have to understand that you have the capability and the responsibility to use that gun, right, in certain circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why you get so much of a public outcry, because you're not supposed to be the person that, it's more likely that another black person will come into this room and shoot me right now than an officer. But that's not been the case. It's been the officers that have just been shooting black people. Now, when you look at this full circle, one thing that really stands out is the training of officers, right? And not just the lack thereof, but also, if you look at other countries, and I'm a big proponent of looking how other people do it, right? Like my grandmother, I love that I was raised by her because the wheel has already been invented. She said, look, this is how you have to follow it. So when you look at other countries, you see that other countries, police officers are more experienced, more training, even more education, right? Yeah. But for the United States, we have this low standard of, okay, let me just put an officer in a suit with a badge with a gun, and they have lack of training, lack of years, lack of experience. And another thing that I have to hit on, because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this, I don't think police officers should be sent out for every situation, right? And
what did I say?
And
Thank you.
Especially in a majority minority county, right? We have to be very conscious, and not only about our police system, public safety, but even our priorities like healthcare, right? In Prince George's County, healthcare is not a high priority.
Exactly.
How is that even a thing, right?
Exactly.
When we have so many black people and even Latinos living in the county, healthcare has to be a top priority. Now, to go back to the public safety issue, we need to make sure that our officers are trained appropriately. They have certain standards to meet, right? Yep. But I'm a big proponent of policing the police. There's not enough standards and oversight and accountability there. Right now, the firing / resignation of Chipsonwinsky is a thing, but it goes deeper than that. It's not just him,
It's not just him.
He's kind of just the face of it all, but it's deeper. I have some officers that are my friends, including yourself, and we talk one-on-one about what's really going on, right? And they tell me, they're like, Chris, listen, it's a good old boys club. Right, there's a lot of racism that occurs in the department. Right, I am a proponent of having and making sure that police officers represent the demographics they serve. I mean, unconsciously, right, and it's innate in us. When I see someone like you and you're a police officer, I get a little bit more comfortable. Right, not entirely more comfortable, but there's like this innate thing. It's like, I'm a black man, you're a black man. We should be able we relate on some type of situation, right? Yeah. So there's definitely different levels to this, right? That we have to think about. But going back to a police officer being called and sent out for every emergency, I think we have to look at that a little differently. We have to pour more into like our mental health capacity. So that means behavioral officers instead of police officers going out and making sure that they know what to do, what's appropriate, because I feel like we're trigger happy. We've gotten to that point where we're trigger happy. No matter if it's right or wrong, we've gotten to the point where police officers, they're just quick to pull their gun out because of all the stereotypes, what they see. Right. And it's bigger than just police officers, right? It's our entire culture. Exactly. Our culture is portrayed. Exactly. Right? I mean, look, I love watching like Friday After Next, like the next person, right? Let's not get it twisted. But when you watch movies like that, and it's been ingrained in our culture for such a long time, like we as black people, even Latino people, we've been negatively stereotyped because I'm both black and Latino. Yeah. We've been both negatively stereotyped for such a long time. It's like an unconscious thing when you see a black person, right? They may have a hoodie, they may have a mask on, et cetera, that you're like, whoa, I gotta watch out for them, right? Yeah. But that's not always the case, and most of the time that's not the case. No, right? So I think we have to change the culture, and I get it. Look, if you do your history, a lot of black movies that you've seen, a lot of black media, even rap videos in the past you've seen because that was popular. Right? For a lot of black actors, they only could get the thug role. They could only get the drug dealer role, et cetera, et cetera. So, when you saw that, you're like, oh, that's a black person. I saw a black person in a movie. He was a drug dealer. Let me, he's moving a certain way. So unconsciously, when that occurs, we're put in this whole dynamics. And that's why it's so important that we have to shift, right, the culture. right? We have to, and I'm not saying take away rap music, R&B. I love it. I'm here for it. But we have to shift how people see us, right? And how and that's why I love when actors are like, no, I'm not taking that role because, you know, that I don't want to be the next drug dealer, right? I don't want to be the next pimp. I don't want to be somebody that's on Section 8 housing, right? We got to come up out of that.
The single mother with the baby daddy in prison, and
exactly,
all of that.
Yeah. So I mean, some of those roles and stories still need to be told. But yeah, you're right, Chris. There are a lot of actors nowadays who are very hesitant to
standing up.
Yeah, they're standing up to, you know, decline those roles and take on more of a leadership
but
role.
They have to. I mean, everybody knows the saying, history just repeats itself.
Right.
You know, history is repeating itself at this point. You know, you got actors standing up. You got civil rights movements. You got everything is repeating itself.
Right.
And the fact that it has to repeat itself is a problem, but we're not going to get on that subject.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, history repeats itself. So this is our time.
Right.
To stand up.
Right.
This is our generation's time to stand up and say enough. You know, because if we don't, we're just going to sink right back into the same shit. And I don't think anybody realizes how far we're sinking and standing up at the same time. But there's got to be more.
Right.
We got to do more.
And I think that's why, like, I was so saddened by the death of Black Panther. Right. It was one of those things where it was a movement. It was right. It was a movement, right? It was like, okay, Black people can really be the superhero, right? Like the Wakanda.
But how many times were we given that? You know, growing up, we got to see DuckTales.
Right.
We got to see, you know, all these white Superman.
Exactly.
I mean, how many times was Static Shock really on mainstream TV?
Exactly.
I paid to see that movie 4 times.
Yeah.
Oh,
Black Panther. I paid to see it 4 times.
I paid for the download. I paid for the man. When I say I paid for everything, oh, you got my full support.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm showing the fuck off. You telling me that I got a black man to look up to?
Man.
Oh, fuck it. Let's go.
I think as a culture, we needed that. We needed something that, you know, wasn't going to be
to give us some pride.
Exactly.
We didn't have anything to really have pride in other than Obama.
Right. And that's why I said on my Facebook post when he passed away, you know, he taught us that we could be superheroes too.
He did.
Right? And that's
not
what we
just
needed.
On screen, but outside screen. The fact that this man went through cancer. And you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
You could, I mean, what's crazy is when that video when that video came out of him looking really sick, I said it. I was like, he looks sick, but maybe he's just eating healthy, or maybe he's just, you know, getting ready for a role. Right. Like, you know, you try to be in denial. Right. But you know, like, unfortunately, I've seen many die from cancer in my family. I've seen the decline. So when I seen him that sunken and that sick, I was like, and I was like, all right, well, maybe he just getting ready for a role. I'm not going to speak that, because you try not to speak, you know, death on anybody's situation. Ill or death on anybody's situation, or sickness on anybody. So you try to, you know. So here I am. But I'm telling you, I legit almost cried. Yeah. I think it literally. I did cry. I didn't almost cry.
I did cry.
It was my pride.
I did cry.
I think you can't tell me I'm not a hood nigga on the line. I'm like, I ain't gonna cry, man. Like, look what I'm doing right now. I'm blending in with my environment.
Look. I think for me, it hit me hard, and this is why I broke down, because, you know, some people know, some people don't know. Like, I went through kidney failure, right? And it was a time in my life where I cut off Facebook, and I kind of had to just look inward and kind of deal with that. And, you know, I remember when it's one thing when you hear about it, but it's another thing when you've gone through a process like it, right? And I remember I would be on the grind all the time. I would have to go to dialysis. I would be working during the day. Dialysis is a long-term treatment that you have to go through. It's painful. And I kind of cut the world off, but I was still trying to grind, right? Because I knew, I was like, this isn't the end for me. And back to, you know, it not being a race war with police. You know, I had a kidney transplant, and my donor is one of my fraternity brothers who happens to be white. Didn't know me at all, right? And said, you know what, like, I'm going to get tested. I'm going to see if we're a match. You know, long story short, he was. I remember to this day, I was in grad school. I was at GW. I was in my macro econ class. Shout out to my professor. And I remember he was texting me, and he was like, I have some good news for you. And I said, what's up? And he said, we're a match, right? And I called him because I wanted to hear the good news. When I got back into the class, I couldn't even concentrate, right? Because shit really got real for me. I was like, oh my gosh. But to go back to the struggle portion, you know, no one, and I think this happens especially in the black community more than other communities, like, we don't really like to talk about our struggles and what we go through.
We're taught at a young age. Keep it inside the household. Don't let nobody know our business.
But I mean, that also adds to the fact that, look, we cannot judge people because we you know, I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, red, whatever. We do not know what other people are truly going through, right? What little nuances that they have to deal with on their everyday life, right? And I think that's why
stressors.
Exactly, and I think that's why we have to invest more in black therapy. Right, and having hard conversations and making sure that we're actually good, and we do this all the time. And when Chadwick died, I posted about this. I said, it's not enough for me to hit you up and say, Vic, are you good? And you just say, yeah, I'm good, and or just say something like, I'm fine, because
for face value.
Yeah,
like,
you know what I'm saying? And we do that all the time.
Yeah.
But we have to dig deeper.
Yep.
Like, what's going on with your actual life, right? Where are you? How are you emotionally, psychologically, you know, biologically? Any way you can think about that, like, we have to invest in each other.
We have to.
We do.
That's a big thing, and I've said it before. We have to start investing in the African American. We have to start pouring into our communities in order for our communities to be seen as serious. And it's sad to say that because we're human beings, whether we're acting a damn fool or not. Our community should be taken care of.
Right.
I mean, I know that you make your community, but let's be real. The government made our communities. Let's speak truth. Let's speak history. The government made our communities, and when we did try to rise up, let's talk about Tulsa. Y'all blew us the fuck up.
Black Wall Street. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I did say something yesterday in regards, and I got a little backlash from it. I didn't care. Y'all want us to remember 9/11, but we can't remember Tulsa.
That's true. That's true.
Weren't they both? I mean, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna speak my conspiracies. Y'all know how I am. Weren't they both in house?
Yeah. But see,
what's the difference?
Well,
one was a political move, while the other one was a political move. Okay, so let's that don't count. So what else? There's only one thing that differs.
See, the difference in their mind is, okay,
the difference is one was taught. 9/11 has been taught. Since 2001, it has been in history books.
Oh, they changed all our books in school.
Where's Tulsa?
They did.
They changed all our books.
Is Tulsa in the history books?
No.
No.
Why not?
That's a good question, right?
But 9/11 is. Weren't they both in house? Weren't they both political moves for the government to push forward and gain? And start a whole war that still lasts until today? That has our black brothers dying, our white brothers dying, our sisters dying? For what? For oil?
Yeah.
I mean,
I always say make it make sense, and I think
it kind of makes sense.
If we're going to, you know, be patriotic about one thing, we have to be patriotic about another.
Everything.
And I think even
so
to that extent,
I mean, the same thing with the Holocaust. You want us to remember the Holocaust? They were slaves. They got treated better than us.
For sure, for sure.
They had cots.
Yeah, that's unequivocal.
We had the floor.
Right. And
hey.
And that's why I'm a fan of, like, having those hard conversations. And to, you know, my white friends and everyone else, you know, I don't have anything against the white community.
Nope.
It's a thing where we just have to have the conversation. And I know it makes you uncomfortable, right? I know it's going to make you uncomfortable. But guess what?
It has
My
to happen.
ancestors were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
You think we weren't
can't-
uncomfortable?
Right.
You think we weren't uncomfortable with whips on our back, couldn't lay down?
And let's talk about it so we can move on, right? So we can correct those wrongs, because those wrongs are still happening in our community today.
Yep.
And that's why we have a problem with it.
Exactly.
Right? That's why we have a chip on our shoulder. We do.
We got a big chip on our shoulder.
Because the consequences, the systematic racism is still in our communities. It's still on the government level. We haven't had any type of solution, any type of help, any type of assistance.
But that
to really
also
help
comes with the people making a change. How many times do we go out and vote for our Congress? How many times do we go out and vote for our representatives? How many times do we go out and all we know is one branch? All we know is one vote. Presidency. They don't do shit.
Right.
The Congress is where we need to hit.
Yeah.
We got people from Congress sitting on seat for 50 years.
Right.
60
you're right.
years.
You're right.
How long was slavery? When did that end? When did segregation end? I mean, they were still sitting on seats during segregation, and you're telling me that you want to change. How do you expect a change without you enforcing it?
And, you know, to add to that, because I think about the legislative piece all the time. I've worked in different legislative capacities on the federal, state, and local level, and even now. You know, we have to be very strategic about where we need that change, right? And I say that to say this. We have to make sure, sometimes it's not in our community where we need to bring about great change. It's about communities that don't have people that look like us, right? Because that's where we need to invest, because we need to change the dynamics of that, right? One of my friends that's a legislator said, Chris, you know, when people ask me to pass pure legislation, and when I say pure legislation, that's a bill. If you write a bill about police reform and you want me to pass it, a lot of times it gets watered down. So that's not pure legislation in the sense. And he was saying that, you know, when people come to me and want me to pass something that I'm already on board with, I say, listen, you have to know how, and this is the state level for Maryland, how the legislative process is gone through, it's passed, and how it's worked. Because you don't need to convince me, right? I have to sit on a committee, right, with a bunch of other legislators across the state, from the Eastern Shore, from the Western Shore, and guess what? In order for that bill to come out of committee, they need to vote for it, right, in order for it to get on the floor. The problem is, my interest in Prince George's County is not their interest on the Eastern Shore, right? So they're not going to vote for something, and if they vote for it, they're going to want to water it down, right? And that's where, and I get that, because people are sometimes
they're not impacted by it,
right? Exactly, and people are like, well, you know, my legislator isn't doing anything, blah blah blah, and it's not that they're not doing anything, but
they have
the way our system, right? The way our system is set up. I have to get all these other votes on committee in order for it to even come out of committee, right? Presented on the floor. By that time, it's already watered down. It doesn't really have the impact that you need.
It's not the same bill it was when it was first drafted.
No, it had a lot of changes, a lot of alterations.
And that's why when something...
But that comes from also learning.
Right.
You have to learn your government. Learn. Like me, I learn. That's why I said we have to change. It's not just presidency.
Right.
And a lot of people, they don't know that because they haven't sat down to learn their government, or they didn't forgot, you know, social studies and things and so on and so forth. They didn't forgot what they learned in school, or they just didn't continue their education from that.
Or they don't care.
Or they don't care to learn. So they but those are the main ones that's screaming Black Lives Matter. Those are the main ones that's trying to make a political statement, but you don't understand politics.
And you know what? That's exactly why I did a march in my city in Glenarden. I live in Glenarden, and I was very excited to do it, but I knew that wasn't enough, right? I said, we have to, where do we go after the march? The march is great. Don't get me wrong. We need the marches, right? Yeah. But where do we go after that? And that's why I was having conversations with legislators that represent Prince George's County, because ultimately they are the ones that can really enact long-term change, and that's what we need. We need long-term change. We don't need something that's going to put a Band-Aid on our community, right? The struggles. We need something that's going to be a forever type of thing, right? So I mean, that's why we have to know that that's the way we have to move. If we don't move, and there are protests going on in Prince George's County now. Shout out to all the protesters that are still protesting.
Yeah.
We need that. But we also have to be very strategic and methodical about the next moves.
Right.
So, it's a long conversation. There isn't a short way to get to a solution. But, it definitely starts with civic engagement, being civically knowledgeable about your community, what your mayor does, all the way up to what your U.S. senator does. What the president does, what the judicial branch does. So it's almost like we need an education campaign, right? Like, and the problem with that is some people are apathetic. Some people don't know. They don't really know how to be engaged, what to do, how to go on about doing it. And I think that's what we specifically have to say. Like, I almost have to hold your hand, and I don't mind holding anyone's hand, because if it's going to bring progress, I'm here for it, right? But we almost have to hold the hand of the community and say, listen, this is what you need to do with your mayor, with your legislators, with the executive branch, and this is how you bring about change.
And that's crazy, because we have, and we talked about this before on previous shows, we have all this technology. How do you not know? You have the internet. Like, you can find anything you want on the internet. So with that being said, people, use the internet to find all these other different things that don't really have any relevancy in our lives. But when it comes to things that affect our lives and our children's lives later down the road, we don't want to do the work for it.
You know what? It brings me to this occurrence that I had. I was on a date one day, and I was talking to this girl, and I said, I was like, oh, what do you do? And she was like, oh, I'm a photographer. And I was like, oh, that's cool, And she was like, what do you do? And I was like, I'm in politics. And she was like, I hate politics. And absolutely, at that moment, I was like, this isn't gonna work. Right? That's all that was going through my mind, right? But the reality of it, and this is how God works.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that everything from how much you pay for rent, to your trash pickup, to how your streets look, to your grocery stores, what food you're eating, it's all involved with politics. And it's funny because like we follow each other on Instagram and stuff, and as the Black Lives Matter movement started to progress, we started posting and
but she's not into politics,
right? I hit her up one day, and she posted about some type of movement. And I was like, oh, that's political, right? And she busted out laughing, and she was like, yeah, I've got more into politics. And I'm like, exactly.
Oh, okay,
You have to be involved in politics. Yeah. Because literally, some people can argue that politics is life, right? Politics is everything that you go through on a daily basis, and it has the capacity to change everything that you go through on a daily basis. So you have to be invested in politics. You do.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back in a second.
Yeah. Man, y'all got some water?
we back with it. Okay, so real quick, before we move on, we was talking during the break. You know, obviously we all went to high school together, and you
Shout out
know,
to Duval High School.
yeah. Shout out to Duval, Tiger Nation.
Tigers.
But yeah, we all went to school together, and we were in school. Chris was in the Student Government Association, and I remember at the time when we were in school, he was really, really heavily involved into it, and it's funny how that moment in time when he was doing the Student Government Association kind of brought him to where he is today. Mm-hmm. So, like, briefly explain that.
Yeah, shout out to my grandmother real quick because, she's definitely a major influence in my life. She was always the woman that was at the Civic Association meetings, even now. I mean, some would argue she's more busy than me, but she was very active in the community, so shout out to her. But, most people don't know that my dad is a doctor, and originally I wanted to go down the medical route. Mm-hmm. And, I was going to, like, these medical conferences. I went to Georgetown for, a summer and, was studying what people would go into medical school for and so forth. But in high school... I was very involved in student government, and I remember one day my advisor, shout out to Ms. Jenkins, she was talking about class officer positions. And I was like, I want to do a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? I want to see what that's like. And I just picked up an application, and it wasn't until I got on the school bus and I used to always sit next to my friend Agnes Ramirez. Shout out to Agnes. She's the one that kind of was the fire and started this political community activism path. And I'll tell you how she started it. And I remember I was on the bus and I was looking over the application. I forget what we were talking about, but she was like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I was like, "Oh, like it's an application for student government. For class office and blase. And I was like, I'm thinking about running. And she almost freaked out on the bus. She was like, "You should run. I believe in you. You can do it. Blah blah blah." And she gave me all the encouragement that I needed to run. And I submitted my name. And I remember one of my best friends. We're still friends to this day. Baba G Day ran against me. And but no, when I went home, I said, I believe I can make an impact, right? I believe that, by me running for class office, running for class VP, I can make an impact. And I remember I went home, I typed up my speech, right? Believe it or not, I had commas that were like 26 fonts, so I knew when to pause, right? I knew when to pause. I knew what to say, like when to say it, how to say it, and I just practiced that speech over and over and over. And I remember the day of the elections, we had to, say a speech in front of my class, and I got up there, and I can't remember verbatim what I said, but it was along the lines of like, I want to be transparent. I'm going to tell you all the truth, what we can, what we can't do, et cetera, et cetera. And I lie to you not. I got a standing ovation, right? I remember people in the crowd were like, "Chris, we love you," and it was just crazy. But the thing is that was my start. That was my start to being more actively involved, talking to people one-on-one, saying, "Listen, what do you want to see, for our class, right?"
Yeah.
And that's what really started, like, realistically, the push to go into more civic engagement, politics, and so forth. And I remember when I was in high school, I think it was the end of our senior year or the end of our junior year, I interned for our congressman at the time. And everything, even though I wanted to go into medicine, everything kind of just made more sense to go into politics, the legal field, around that. So that's really what did it for me. I think it was those combinations, and ironically, the congressman, he's not our congressman anymore, but he's now my fraternity brother, Congressman Alwyn, shout out to him. He taught me a lot of different things about just being political, being active, being ingrained in the community, being a part of change, right? And everything just took off from there. from being in the College Democrats to being president of the College Democrats to working on campaigns. I mean, I worked on municipal, state, federal campaigns. Like, you know, I've worked in the offices of various politicians, and it just kept on going.
It's crazy because when we were in school, and you know, I seen you, you know, and we, you know, finally met. We started talking. The career path you've chosen doesn't surprise me because, you know, in school you was this laid back, chill, you know, approachable people person. And, you know, when we were in school, you know, you were 2 years, you know, ahead of us. I was like, you know, this is the model I want to follow. You know, this is someone who, you know, I look up to. Well, yeah, kind of in a way because, you know, me and Chris have like a lot of similarities as far as our personality. You know, laid back, chill, people person, approachable, like speaking in public. You know, so when I seen that, I was like, okay, like this is the model to follow. And you know, seeing where you are now, career wise, and the path you've chosen doesn't really surprise me at all. You know, so yeah.
I appreciate that, bro. I really do, from the bottom of my heart.
Appreciate all the work you're doing so far.
That means a lot,
and we'll continue to do.
It does mean a lot for you to be in politics. There's not a lot of us in politics.
Right.
That's true too.
The more of us come, the more of us stand.
Right. You know, recently I was selected for the Daily Records Top 40 Under 40 for the leaders in Maryland. And I was telling one of my friends, we were having a conversation about that. And I said, you know, this is nice. It's a nice award to win. You know, it means a lot. But at the end of the day, I care about the work, right? I care about, you know, people like to talk a lot, right?
The dirty work.
I'm not a talker. I'm a doer. I want to bring forth a lot of change for my community. And I was telling him, I said, look, to me, I know a lot of people. I know a lot of politicians. I can call, you know, certain politicians right now. I know they're going to answer the phone, and we can start conversation to create change. But I said, it doesn't mean, like, winning those awards doesn't mean anything if you don't use your capabilities to create change, right? Like if I know all these politicians and I know, you know, this person, that person, and I don't act on it, right? Then it's void to me. It means nothing to me. And it's kind of like that saying where, like, people say knowledge is everything, and I kind of disagree with that, because if you read 1,000 books and you become, you know, the most, you know, intelligent person on this planet, but you don't apply it,
Exactly.
Don't pass it down.
Exactly. And that's another thing, right? You don't apply it or you don't pass it down, it means nothing, right? And I think that's why, like, I concentrate so much on helping the next person. You know, helping them up. Like, there's a lot of people, you know, that say, Chris, like, I also want to get into politics. How do I do this? And I'm always willing to say, listen, I'm going to keep it real with you. These are the steps you need to take. Watch out for that, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, a lot of politicians in our county now, even on the local, state, and federal level, they don't do that. Right? They don't do it. So I appreciate, some do. Like, you know, I have a couple of mentors in office right now that when I talk to them, they are literally teaching me the ways. They're saying, Chris, watch out for this. This is how you have to move, et cetera, et cetera. I really appreciate that, because we need that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That. You know, I don't want to reinvent the wheel when the wheel's already created or invented, because I want to make the best decisions for my community as possible. And that means having mentors in your life that are able, that are accessible, that will teach you the ways. You know, so I think
correct ways.
Yeah, the correct ways. And I think we need more of that, not just in the political field, but
just
in every field,
in the African American
in the Black community.
I agree,
Seriously.
100%.
Yeah, because for a lot of things, the blueprint is already there. It's about expanding on the blueprint and can just continuing on that work instead of, okay, well, the blueprint is made and I'm just going to kind of hold it to myself and not pass down any of this good knowledge.
As a people.
We
have a habit of accepting the bare minimum, and saying, oh, okay, that's what, okay, you know, just take it, like it comes, and I don't think a lot of people, you know how I am, I don't think a lot of people realize that it comes from generations and generations and generations. It's a generational curse. from slavery that we are still dealing with today. And until we admit that to ourselves and try to work on bettering ourselves, like you said, we need better government, but we also need better people. We have to better ourselves. We can't depend on a government that don't fuck with us to help us. Let's just be real. We can't depend on a government that's supposed to, you know, like all of these things. And it's systematically set up to fuck us over. And we sit here and we say, okay, well, I'm mad today. Oh, Black Lives Matter. Oh, you know, all of that. Where are you at a month later? Where are you at a week later?
What are you going to do about it?
Where are you at 2 days later?
Like, and that's why
you're going with what's popular.
Right.
And we're not a movement. We're not to be what's popular. No, it's an issue that we are speaking on, that we are discussing, that we are trying to get national attention to. And we continue to just say, okay,
do it for the hashtag.
The bare minimum.
And you know what's crazy?
That hashtag bullshit.
And what's crazy
on
is
social media.
What's crazy
what does
is
it do?
there are a lot of white people who are a part of the movement, who is deeply involved in the movement, that are doing more than our own people.
It should never be that way.
And it should not be that way.
And unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of double standard in the African American community. Once again, based on our history, it's not surprising that we have gained this mindset of a double standard. So we sit, you know, and have, like, how do I put this? Y'all know I usually
just say it. Just say it.
Nah, I'm trying to figure out how I'm trying to portray this, because you have to be careful with what you say and how you say it. Because you can get a lot of backlash. And you know me, I don't give a fuck about all the backlash. I'm quick to tell somebody, okay, well, fucking do better. And if the shoe fits, then wear that bitch. And if it fits and you don't like the shoe, get a better shoe. But don't be, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, it's a double standard in the African American community. And it's not just politically, it's across the board. Relationship wise, expectation wise. We have this double standard mindset that this world owes us something. Although, at the end of the day, when you think about the history of the African American people, we are owed a fucking lot. If they don't want to give it to us, let's go get it our fucking selves.
That's the only alternative.
That's the only alternative. Yeah, I mean, when you have a whole system set up to oppress you, you don't want to go out and vote. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. But you expect them to do this. You expect them to do that. That's a double standard. That is a double standard in your society, in the way that you think. And we have to stop that shit.
Yeah, you gotta draw the line.
You can't expect them to give to us if we're not changing anything within them to want to give to us.
You gotta draw the line in the sand somewhere.
And another thing that I want to touch on earlier, you said about black on black crime. I fucking hate that term. I despise that term with everything in me. There's no such thing, like you said. There's white on white crime. There's Hispanic on Hispanic crime.
It's all
There's
crime.
white on white crime. No, it's crime. Unfortunately, it's just higher in the African American, in our African American communities, because of the fact that, look at what it's a whole system set up to fuck us over. What do you expect crime to be? Low? If we have to, it's like the Hunger Games. Let's it's
analogy.
just like the Hunger Games. So in the Hunger Games, if they weren't able to kill, if they weren't able to do what they had to do to eat, how were they going to survive?
Survival of the fittest.
It is.
It's survival of the fittest in our communities because of the way that y'all have made our communities to be. But you want to sit there and change a whole entire world to be against us. when you put them against us.
Preach.
You caused us to be this way. You brought us from let's take it all the way back. You brought our asses from Africa, and some of our ancestors are from this land. We are Native Americans from this fucking land. And even at the end of the day, the first person was found in Africa. We all got some African in us.
Yeah, everyone.
So to go and say, you know, and set this standard of African American people to be less than, to be broke, to be ghetto, to be no, baby. We're cultured. 1. 2, we're traumatized. 3, we PTSD is real.
It is.
It's real. It's seriously real.
It really
and
is.
it's not just from and that's what people don't understand. It's not just something that affected you directly, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Seeing your brothers and sisters every day on the news shooting each other, shooting or either, and if we're not shooting each other, we have somebody shooting at us.
I truly believe that there's a lot of PTSD in our community.
So you can't tell me, you can't tell me that we're not traumatized. You can't tell me that we're not angry. And some people don't even understand why they're angry.
Right.
Oh, I'm just this way. No, baby, you're not.
Yeah.
You're traumatized.
Yeah, we're all traumatized in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just different levels to it.
Yeah. And there's some that are angry. There are some that speak up. There's some that just sit back and watch. There's some that don't understand their anger.
Yeah.
I mean, you got babies, 4, 5, 6, 7. They don't understand why they angry, but they see, you know, wait, my people are angry.
Right.
This is upsetting to us. Why did they kill him?
Right.
Why did they shoot him?
Right. And you know, on that note, I think, you know, a lot of people, especially in our community, either hate, dislike Trump, and I understand why. I think the only thing that comes from Trump being in office is the fact that
the veil has been lifted.
It's been lifted. It's a necessary evil. We had to hit this point in time, right? In order, because if we did have, you know, President Hillary Clinton in office, right? I don't feel as though we would be changing, or it wouldn't be as public. The movement wouldn't be this big, right? We would still have
makes us uncomfortable,
right? And sometimes we have to get uncomfortable, right? Because that brings change, right? When you go to the gym,
as like a diamond. You think a diamond is comfortable through the process of being made?
Exactly. You have to get uncomfortable in order to bring about that change. So it's almost like right now in history, right now, we have to one for sure take action, but 2, we had to get to a point where we're just fed up. Like it's no more just relaxing on the couch.
Or
somebody
just seeing
else
it
will
on the
handle
news,
it.
taking it to the chin.
Exactly.
Somebody else will handle it.
Yeah, we can't
get
pass
your
the
ass
buck.
up and handle it.
No. If you are not feeling a certain way with what's going on in history right now, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? It like, to me, that would be unbelievable. Right, especially when you come from a minority community.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to use this moment in time, right, to project ourselves in the direction that we want to go into.
Very true.
Man, this has been.
Without it, you can't expect.
This has been an amazing show. I want to thank my good brother Chris for coming on the show today.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate the work you do in the community, and we'll continue to do. And we definitely have you back on the show.
Absolutely, bro. Appreciate y'all.
All right, so that's it for today's show. This is Spade of Spades podcast. We are out. Y'all be safe.
Peace.
Adios.